So with me today is Marty Cormier. So happy to have you here. We worked together at a company for 2 years, and I'm glad we've stayed connected since then, this ongoing journey about distance learning that we're both on. Could you just give me a brief intro or bio about your background?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. Pleasure to be here with you too from across the miles. I first realized that adult learning in a corporate situation was my path a long time ago. My first job out of undergraduate school, I had an opportunity to be a training assistant for a period of time there. Fast forward a couple of decades, for about 25 years, I've had a chance to work with a host of organizations and have really enjoyed watching people learn as I've learned with them in both face-to-face situations and now, more recently, with the way the world is changing in these virtual situations. So a little bit of my story now.
Great, thank you. And let's use that as our launching off point. When did you start experiencing that shift from the face-to-face to the virtual?
Yeah, so as I was thinking about your questions over the weekend, I had to go back in time, and my earliest dabblings in virtual learning was back in 2004, 2005. I worked for a company that had people all over North America, and that's when I first went through a certification exercise. The platform that we were certified in still used today, so it's one of the top five. Not doing any plugs right now, but my real consistent use of this kind of platform for learning happened in 2017. Working for the company that you and I both work for with folks in the US and Canada, because the employee population was spread out in so many places and there were just little pockets of people in each one of the offices, it was cost prohibitive for someone like me to travel. So from that point, any and all offerings were done nearly all virtually.
Okay. What was the learning curve on that like?
So interesting, right? So I'm a guy who really enjoys being with people and being in a room. And what I missed and still do a lot is being in that room. There's something about having space to move around and being really physical when you're having a variety of conversations. So collaborating and experiencing through that kind of impact with human beings face to face is one of a kind. But there's a need to do it differently today. And so the learning has to go on. The curve has been really quite a fun and joyful experience.
Nice. That's good to hear. Thinking about that, what was the aha moment for you where you realized, okay, I need to do something differently in order to have those same moments going on?
Yeah. So aside from the black and white, like there's no travel budget, the aha moment for me was back in 2017 when we were tasked with delivering a course for first-time managers. In February that year, there were 16 newly promoted folks who were looking to this course to help them build their own framework of how to get work done through others. Never having been a supervisor before, we were responsible for helping shape their path. And so what I remember, and again, you said aha moment, what I remember was in our kickoff call, as they started to introduce themselves, I noticed that so many of them were attending for the same reason, which allowed there to be some real unity of purpose. They were there to be the best managers they could be. So it was in that call that we talked openly and honestly about how we could and would reinvent this sort of blended virtual instructor-led conversation and what that meant to be successful for me as a facilitator, what it meant for them as learners, and what it also meant for their managers who also had a stake in the success of the learning.
Nice. Nice. And obviously, you know where I'm going with this. I've done a few videos and an article now on transactional distance. And you just hit upon, well, you hit upon two things, the communication, and then that respect for the fact that adult learners are so much different than the K through 12 population where we get a lot of our learning theory from. We have to approach it differently. I love how it sounds like you set up norms.
Yeah.
You involved them in that process of what are the norms of this learning experience. So is that something you do consistently with, I'll say, classes that you run or sessions that you run?
Yeah, absolutely. As adults who are in a learning environment and getting paid to be there, the expectation is completely different.
Mhm,
So one of the pieces of feedback that I've received, even from the most introverted of participants,
mhm,
is that they were clear up front that there was an expectation and an agreement that they would participate.
mhm.
And so establishing that norm early on, hey, know that I'm going to call on every person every single time, be ready, really allowed them to be more engaged. With the tools that we have, we can see, how people are actually actively involved in whatever the learning is, or if they've, strayed away for a bit. The tools help us see that. What I found was by getting people's commitment up front, and by holding them to their agreement, because I was going to be there, they needed to be there too, that folks were significantly more committed to the 55 minutes of active participation once a week in the effort.
Nice, nice. Now, something you're also passionate about, if I can put words in your mouth, is continuing that communication between sessions.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you maintain that connection?
Oh, that's where, we get, you and I get really geeky on this. And so, it's really understanding that there's a process, right? So it's understanding what the outcomes are, and those are defined early on. And then someone like you does a beautiful job of designing the learning experience. And then we have that delivery moment, right? And I think for so many people, um, the belief is that it ends there, when in reality, the actual training room is real life outside of whatever the space for learning is. So even though we might have spent hours in a classroom in a face-to-face version of a learning event in the past, there's still time
Mhm.
that is invested in bringing people into the application or the transfer. So I stay on it by making sure that I'm connected to them after, in a host of ways, like emails, and that include very reflective questions, and creating small groups where 2 or 3 people are having conversations during the course of the week, or maybe people are posting things to a shared space. It's about thinking about and holding people accountable to their commitment, and then just figuring out creative ways to do it.
Nice. So when you talk about reflective questions, could that be something as simple as, how do you use this on the job this week?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and what kind of reaction did you get from others? And have you engaged someone in a conversation about your attempt to use this, and what was their experience of it? Right? There're
Mhm.
just a whole bunch of questions that people can ask, or engage in conversation with others informally, that allow them the input that allows the learning to continue to happen.
Nice. Now, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit, because I think it's helpful for people to know how they can do something, not
Mm.
just what to do, but how they can do it and what are the methods. So when you talk about putting people in small groups or sharing things to a shared space, what are some of the tools you've used?
Yeah, so well, in a virtual space like we are online having this conversation now,
Mhm,
lots of the platforms have breakout sessions.
mhm,
So that's one of the easiest ways to have people in the context of a scheduled event
mhm,
go off and do some work together. But I don't know that it's imperative that it be limited to that. What I really enjoy doing, is creating small groups,
mhm,
small cohorts of people who work together through portions of whatever the course is. So let's say, for example, in this new manager course,
mhm.
we met for 8 sessions over a 2-month period. A kickoff call, 7 sessions. Actually, there's 9, and then there was the graduation. And so midway through that course, small groups were reassigned. So first 4 sessions, or people were working together in groups of 3, and then we changed it up. And that allowed lots of exposure to different thoughts, different processes from region to region, what geographical demographics were bringing to the conversation, and how that shifted things up a bit. So lots of ways to mix it up for folks when we're learning both in and out of the classroom.